Tutankhamun, Tutankhamun and the end of the Amarna period. The rehabilitation of the cult of Amun began before Tutankhamun came to the throne. But there is no denying that Tutankhamun's reign witnessed the completion of a multitude of projects that his predecessor could not have hoped even to initiate, let alone realize, in the brief interval between Akhenaten's death and Tutankhamun's accession. For Tutankhamun's role in this process, Egyptologists regularly cite the inscription preserved on an impressive quartzite stela, 2.25 meters tall, in the collection of the Egyptian Museum, Cairo. The text, which formally and irrevocably signaled the end of the Amarna period. The Restoration Stela. The stela was discovered in the northeast corner of the hypostyle hall at Karnak Temple by the French archaeologist Georges Legrain in 1905. Two fragments of a second stela inscribed with the same text come from the Munthu Temple, located just outside Karnak's enclosure wall to the north. Legrain found one of them shortly before he unearthed the complete stela. The second fragment came from excavations conducted at the Munthu Temple in 1940. It would not be at all surprising if additional stelas or fragments with essentially the same text were to surface one day elsewhere, such as in the environs of ancient Memphis. On the virtually complete stela in Cairo, the text is written from left to right, reversing the normal orientation of Egyptian hieroglyphic inscriptions. This suggests that it represents one half of a pair. The text preserved on the fragments from the Munthu Temple is oriented from right to left, but nevertheless they are unlikely to derive from the presumed pendant of the complete stela, since the frieze of pinioned lapwings with human arms, raised in adoration, below the bottom line of the text on the latter, does not occur on the fragments. Friezes with the lapwing monogram were used as a dado ornament in those parts of New Kingdom temples to which access was not limited to a select few. While such friezes may be unusual in the design of stelas, one does occur on a stela of Amenhotep III and on a stela set up by Hormab as king in Amenhotep III's funerary temple on the west bank at Thebes, as well as on yet another large stela commissioned in Tutankhamun's name for Karnak, but left unfinished at his death. Its use on these stelas suggests that access to them was comparatively unrestricted. Those of Amenhotep III and Hormab were discovered in secondary contexts, while the exact spot where Tutankhamun's unfinished stela stood at Karnak is not known. The complete restoration stela is quite likely to have been erected originally in front of Pylon 3 at Karnak Temple, nearby where it was discovered, accessible to passers-by in Tutankhamun's day. In the design of the restoration stela, the lapwings pay homage to a pair of cartouches in the center of the frieze. Originally, they enclosed Tutankhamun's throne and personal names. Like all the other cartouches on the stela, including those in the vertical column of text on both small sides, they were altered to name Hormab, but the three remaining elements of Tutankhamun's complete titulary in the text were left untouched. In the symmetrically organized composition of the lunette, Ankhesenamun stood behind Tutankhamun, who presents offerings to Amun and Mut. All that is left today to document the Queen's presence are the tips of the double plumes from her headdress at the left edge of the lunette, traces of her titles, beginning Great Royal Wife, Mistress of the Two Lands, and the very bottom of the cartouche without any hieroglyphs, which once identified her, located to the left of the blue crown streamers lying over Tutankhamun's shoulder plate vi. Perhaps Ankhesenamun once assisted her spouse by shaking a sistrum, like Queen Tiye in the company of Amenhotep III. A traditional prophylactic inscription, intended to protect the king from harm approaching him from behind, was cut into a layer of plaster, applied over the pitted surface where the queen once stood. The standard formula probably replaced the queen's figure at the same time. The text below was usurped in Hormab's favor. Both depictions in the lunette of Amun-Re, king of the gods, and Mut, mistress of Isharu, as the labels style the couple, are conventional. He wears his characteristic crown with double plumes and a long, stiff, pendant streamer hanging down his back, she, the double crown with uraeus atop, a tripartite wig. Mut embraces Amun with one arm, and in the other hand, she holds the sign of life and H. Amun, too, grasps an Ankh, another is attached to the end of a long scepter that he extends to Tutankhamun's nose, just as he had to other kings, as early as the Middle Kingdom. In contrast to the figures of the gods, those of the king are not identical. To the left he wears the blue crown while proffering bouquets, and to the right, the royal nem's headcloth, as he elevates a libation vessel. Mark Gabold's proposal that two different sculptors were responsible for carving the figural decoration of the lunette is persuasive. The right-hand half was never given the finishing touches evident. At the left, the proportions of the figures have nothing in common with the art of the Amarna period. Unlike those in the lunette of the small stele in Berlin, rather, the style is typical for the reign of Tutankhamun, as epitomized in the reliefs of the colonnade hall of Lua Temple, which cannot have been carved early in the reign. All that remains of the date that introduced the text is 4th month of the inundation season, day 19. The regnal year is lost. In the usurped cartouches that now read Hormab, beloved of Amun, the god's name was taken over from the writing of Tutankhamun. In other words, the stele was carved after the name change from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun, but whenever that may have been before his 4th regnal year is not known. To a certain extent, the date mentioned on the stele is irrelevant, since it may well have been retrospective. In the introductory lines of the text, Tutankhamun's complete titulary is augmented by a variety of epithets associating him with a number of traditional deities. Commenting on gender aspects of the text, John Baines terms the mention of goddesses alongside gods a crucial feature of the inscription. In this context, a reference to a passage in the text of Akhenaten's earlier proclamation, recorded on boundary steles at Tel El Amarna, would have been relevant. In it, Akhenaten claims that the site he chose for founding a new capital in Middle Egypt did not belong to a god or a goddess, to a male ruler or to a female ruler.